I never thought I'd hear those words from my own daughter. Your place is in a home, Mom. She said it so casually, as if she were suggesting what to have for dinner. But in that moment, sitting in my own living room surrounded by 40 years of memories, I realized my daughter had already made plans for my future. Plans that didn't include asking me what I wanted. I'm Eleanor Morrison, 73 years old, and I've lived in this house for 4 decades. I raised 2 children here, buried a husband, survived cancer twice, and rebuilt my life more times than I care to count. My mind is sharp, my body still capable, and my spirit certainly not broken. Yet somehow my daughter Jessica decided I was no longer fit to manage my own affairs. What she didn't know was that I had already made my own decision, and it would change everything. Let me take you back to where this really began, because Jessica's words weren't born overnight. They were the culmination of months of subtle disrespect, condescension, and what I can only describe as a slow erosion of my autonomy. I was widowed 7 years ago when my husband Richard died suddenly from a heart attack. We'd been married for 45 years. The grief nearly destroyed me, but I survived. I had to. Richard would have wanted me to keep going, to keep living. So I did. For the first few years after his death, Jessica was supportive. She called regularly, visited on weekends, helped me sort through Richard's belongings. I was grateful. She has 2 children of her own, Emma and Jake, and a demanding career as a marketing director. Her husband, Brad, works in finance. They live in a beautiful home in the suburbs, the kind with a 3-car garage and a pool in the backyard. My son, Michael, lives across the country in California. He's a software engineer, married to a wonderful woman named Sarah. They have 1 daughter, Lily. We video chat monthly and they visit once or twice a year. The distance has always made our relationship different from the one I have with Jessica. More formal perhaps, but no less loving. After Richard died, I had to learn how to manage everything he'd always handled. The finances, the house maintenance, the investments. At first it was overwhelming. I made mistakes. I accidentally let the homeowner's insurance lapse for 2 weeks before catching it. I forgot to pay the water bill 1 month. Small things, but Jessica noticed every single one. Mom, you need help with this stuff, she'd say, reviewing my checkbook like I was a child who couldn't add. Maybe you should let me take over some of these responsibilities. I resisted at first. I told her I was learning, that I just needed time to adjust to handling everything alone. And I did learn. Within 6 months, I had every bill on automatic payment, a budget spreadsheet I updated weekly, and a financial advisor who helped me understand Richard's investments. I was managing just fine, but Jessica couldn't see that. Or wouldn't. The real trouble started about 18 months ago. I'd decided to take a watercolor painting class at the community center. I'd always wanted to paint, but Richard thought it was frivolous. After he died, I thought, why not? Life is short. Do the things that bring you joy. I loved it. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, I'd go to class, mix colors, and lose myself in creating something beautiful. I made friends there too, Margaret, who was 75 and had more energy than people half her age, and Dorothy, a widow like me who understood the challenge of rebuilding a life alone. One Thursday, Jessica called me at 10 in the morning. I didn't answer because I was in class. She called again at 10:30, and again at 11. When I finally called her back during my lunch break, she was frantic. Mom, where were you? I was about to drive over there. I thought you'd fallen or had a stroke or something. Jessica, I was in my painting class. I told you about it. You can't just not answer your phone, Mom. What if there was an emergency? What emergency? Jessica, I'm allowed to be busy. I'm allowed to have a life. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said something that should have been my first warning. At your age, Mom, you need to be more careful. Things can happen. You're not as young as you think you are. At my age. As if 73 meant I was 1 foot in the grave. That was just the beginning. Over the following months, Jessica's concern morphed into something else. Control. She started showing up unannounced, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. I'd come home from grocery shopping to find her in my kitchen, rearranging my pantry. Mom, some of these canned goods are expired. You could get food poisoning. They expired 2 weeks ago, Jessica. That's not dangerous. Still, you need to be more careful. Another time, I came back from a doctor's appointment to find her in my bathroom, going through my medicine cabinet. Mom, you have 3 bottles of the same pain medication. That's dangerous. You could accidentally overdose. I know exactly what medications I take and when. I've been managing my prescriptions perfectly fine. Have you? Because Dr. Patterson told me last month that you missed a follow-up appointment. I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. You talked to my doctor about me? Without my permission. I'm listed as your emergency contact, Mom. He called me when you didn't show up. I rescheduled that appointment. There was a conflict with my painting class exhibition. Jessica shook her head like I was a confused child. See, this is what I'm talking about. You're prioritizing painting over your health. I wanted to scream. The appointment had been routine, a standard checkup. I'd rescheduled it for the following week. There was nothing irresponsible about that. But in Jessica's eyes, every small thing became evidence of my declining capability. The incidents multiplied. She criticized how I organized my bills. She questioned my grocery choices. She suggested I was spending too much money on unnecessary things like my painting supplies and the book club subscription I joined. Mom, you need to be more frugal. You're on a fixed income now. I have Richard's life insurance, my pension, and our savings. I'm very comfortable financially, Jessica. My financial advisor confirmed that last month. Still, at your age, you need to think about the future. What if you need care someday? Long-term care is expensive. At your age. There it was again. I tried to be patient. I reminded myself that Jessica was busy, stressed with her own life. Maybe her concern came from a good place, even if her execution was overbearing. But it kept getting worse. 6 months ago, she started bringing Brad to our conversations. Brad is a nice enough man, but he has an arrogance about him, especially when it comes to money. He's the type who assumes his financial success means he knows better than everyone else about everything. One Sunday, they showed up together for what I thought was just a normal visit. But Jessica had an agenda. Mom, Brad and I have been talking. We're worried about you living alone in this big house. The house is a modest 3-bedroom ranch. Hardly a mansion. What do you mean? I've lived here for 40 years. Brad leaned forward, putting on his reasonable businessman voice. Eleanor, Jessica's just concerned about the burden of maintaining this property. The yard work, the repairs, the utilities. At this stage of life, wouldn't something smaller be easier? I have a gardener who comes twice a month. My house is in excellent condition, and I like having space. Jessica jumped in. But what if something happens, Mom? What if you fall and no one's here to help? What if there's a fire or a break-in? Jessica, those things could happen to anyone at any age. I have a medical alert system. I have smoke detectors and a security system. I'm perfectly safe. Are you though? Brad asked. Because Jessica told me about the time you left the stove on. My face burned with humiliation and anger. That happened once 6 months ago. I was boiling water for tea and got distracted by a phone call. The water boiled dry. The pot was ruined, but nothing else happened. I've never done it again. But you could, Jessica said quietly. Mom, we're not trying to upset you. We just want what's best for you. I should have ended the conversation there. I should have asked them to leave. But I was still trying to be the accommodating mother, the one who didn't cause trouble or make her daughter's life harder. I appreciate your concern, but I'm managing fine. I'm healthy, active, and independent. I don't need to make any changes. They left shortly after, but I could see the look Jessica and Brad exchanged. They weren't satisfied. They weren't done. A month later, Jessica started bringing up senior living communities. She'd leave brochures on my coffee table during her visits. Glossy pamphlets showing smiling elderly people playing cards, doing yoga, eating meals together. Mom, just look at these. They're not nursing homes. They're independent living communities. You'd have your own apartment, but there would be people around, activities, meals provided if you want them. I don't want them. I want my home. But wouldn't it be nice not to worry about cooking and cleaning all the time? I like cooking, and I have a cleaning service that comes every other week. Jessica, why are you pushing this? I'm not pushing. I'm just showing you options. But she was pushing. Every conversation somehow circled back to it. How much easier my life would be. How much safer I'd be. How many friends I'd make. What she really meant was how much easier it would be for her not to worry about me. Except she was creating the worry herself, manufacturing problems that didn't exist. I started to dread her visits. Every time my doorbell rang, my stomach would clench with anxiety. What would she criticize today? What new evidence of my supposed decline would she find? 3 months ago, things escalated dramatically. I'd gone on a weekend trip with Margaret and Dorothy to a bed and breakfast about 2 hours away. We'd planned it for weeks. I told Jessica about it, left her the phone number of where we'd be staying packed carefully, and was looking forward to a relaxing weekend. We had a wonderful time. We toured gardens, visited an art museum, had leisurely dinners, and stayed up late talking about our lives, our losses, our hopes. It was exactly what I needed. When I returned home Sunday evening, there were 17 missed calls from Jessica. 17. I called her immediately, worried something terrible had happened. Mom! Finally! Where have you been? On my trip, Jessica. I told you about it. I called the bed and breakfast. They said you'd gone out for the day, and they didn't know when you'd be back. Yes, we went to the art museum. My phone was in my purse and I didn't hear it. Is everything okay? Is something wrong? I needed to talk to you and you were unreachable for an entire day. Jessica. What was the emergency? Silence. Then, there wasn't an emergency. I just wanted to talk to you. I felt something crack inside me. You called me 17 times because you wanted to talk? You're my mother. I should be able to reach you. I'm also an adult who deserves privacy and independence. Jessica, this has to stop. What has to stop? This constant monitoring. This treatment like I'm incompetent. I went on a weekend trip with friends. That's normal and healthy. For someone younger, maybe. But Mom, you're 73. Anything could happen. There it was again. My age wielded like a weapon against my autonomy. Jessica, I'm done with this conversation. I'm tired from my trip. We'll talk later. I hung up before she could respond. I was shaking, tears streaming down my face. Not from sadness but from frustration and anger. When had I lost my daughter's respect? When had I become a burden to be managed rather than a person to be loved? The breaking point came 6 weeks ago. I'd been having some minor chest pains, nothing serious, but I'm not stupid about heart symptoms. I called my doctor, who told me to come in immediately. She ran tests, EKG, blood work, the whole routine. Everything came back normal. The chest pains were anxiety-related, likely from stress. I knew what the stress was. It was Jessica. My doctor asked if something was bothering me. I broke down and told her everything. How my daughter treated me like I was senile. How she constantly invaded my privacy and second-guessed every decision I made. Dr. Patterson listened carefully, then said something that changed everything. Eleanor, you're one of the most capable 73-year-olds I know. You're healthy, mentally sharp, and more independent than many people half your age. But chronic stress will damage your health more than anything else. You need to set boundaries even with family. Especially with family. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing and doing are different things. I didn't tell Jessica about the chest pains or the doctor's visit. I knew if I did, she'd use it as more ammunition, more proof that I couldn't take care of myself. But somehow she found out anyway. I still don't know how. Maybe she called my doctor's office and charmed the receptionist. Maybe she saw a medical bill. However it happened, 3 days later, she showed up at my house with Brad and an extremely serious expression. Mom, we need to talk. My heart sank. I knew this wasn't going to be good. We sat in the living room, Jessica and Brad on the couch, me in my favorite armchair. The same chair where I'd nursed both my children when they were babies. The same chair where Richard and I had watched countless movies together. The same chair where I'd cried after his funeral. Mom, I know about the chest pains. They were nothing. Anxiety. Everything checked out fine. Exactly, Jessica said. Anxiety. Mom, you're so stressed that you're having chest pains. That's not normal. It's stress from you constantly hovering over me and treating me like I'm incompetent. Jessica flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm trying to help you. I don't need the kind of help you're offering. I need you to respect me and trust that I can manage my own life. Brad interjected. Eleanor, Jessica loves you. We both do. But love means making hard decisions sometimes. A chill ran down my spine. What hard decisions? Jessica pulled out a folder from her bag. We've been looking at options. There's a very nice assisted living facility about 20 minutes from our house. They have immediate openings. The rooms are spacious, the staff is well trained, and they have a full activities program. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. You're looking at facilities for me? Without even asking me. We're just exploring options, Mom. The stress of living alone is literally making you sick. You need support, care, someone checking on you regularly. I need to be left alone to live my life. You're being stubborn, Jessica said, her voice hardening. You're letting pride cloud your judgment. This isn't about what you want, Mom. It's about what you need. I stood up, my hands trembling. Get out. Mom. I said, get out. This is my house. I didn't ask for your opinion about where I should live. You had no right to look at facilities without consulting me. Get out. Now. Brad stood, pulling Jessica up with him. Eleanor, you're being unreasonable. I'm being unreasonable? You come into my home and tell me I need to go live in an institution against my will, and I'm being unreasonable? Get out. They left, Jessica crying, Brad looking angry. I slammed the door behind them and locked it. Then I stood in my hallway and cried harder than I had since Richard died. But through the tears something else emerged. Determination. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation over and over. The audacity of it. The assumption that they had any right to make decisions about my life. The complete disregard for my wishes, my autonomy, my dignity. And then I remembered something. About 8 months ago, during one of her helpful visits, Jessica had asked me to sign some papers. She said they were medical power of attorney documents, in case something happened to me and doctors needed to make decisions. I'd signed them without reading them carefully. I trusted her. At 3 a.m, I got up and went to my filing cabinet. I found the copies and read them under my kitchen light. My stomach dropped. They weren't just medical power of attorney. Jessica had also included a financial power of attorney. If a doctor declared me incapable of making my own decisions, Jessica would have complete control over my finances, my property, everything. I thought about those chest pains, the anxiety diagnosis. What if Jessica took that medical report and used it to argue I was unfit? Could she? The next morning I called my financial advisor, Robert Chen. I'd been working with him for 5 years, and he'd always been straight with me. Robert, I need your honest assessment. Am I managing my finances competently? There was surprise in his voice. Eleanor, you're one of my most organized clients. Your budget is sound, your investments are appropriate for your age and risk tolerance, and you've never missed a payment or made a reckless decision. Why are you asking? I told him everything. About Jessica, the power of attorney, the pressure to move into assisted living. Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Eleanor, I'm going to be frank with you. Yes, if someone wanted to make a case that you're incompetent, they could try. But it would be a hard case to make because all the evidence contradicts it. However, the fact that you've given your daughter financial power of attorney means she could potentially access your accounts if she claimed you were incapacitated. Even if I'm not? It would depend on the specific language of the document and how aggressive she wanted to be. The power of attorney I saw you sign only activates if you're declared incompetent by a medical professional. But definitions of incompetent can be fuzzy. My hands were shaking. What should I do? First, don't panic. Second, you need to have a very clear conversation with your daughter about boundaries. And third, if you don't trust her with that level of power, you need to revoke the power of attorney. Can I do that? Absolutely. You're the principal. You can revoke it at any time as long as you're mentally competent, which you clearly are. That conversation gave me the ammunition I needed, but it also terrified me. My own daughter had maneuvered me into signing documents that could give her control over my life. Did she plan this? Or did it just happen gradually, her concern morphing into something darker? I spent the next week in a fog of grief and anger. Jessica called twice. I didn't answer. She left voicemail saying we needed to talk, that she was sorry I got upset, but she was only trying to help. Her apology wasn't for what she'd done. It was for my reaction to it. She still thought she was right. I realized I needed advice beyond my financial advisor. I needed legal advice. I called my friend Margaret, who'd gone through something similar with her own son several years ago. Eleanor, you need to talk to my attorney, James Morrison. No relation to you, I assume, but he specializes in elder law. He helped me when my son tried to get me declared incompetent so he could access my estate. What happened? James stopped it cold. Helped me establish clear legal boundaries. My son and I don't speak anymore, which breaks my heart, but at least I'm living on my own terms. That phrase stuck with me. Living on my own terms. I made an appointment with James Morrison for the following week. He was a kind man in his mid-50s with gray at his temples and a gentle but direct manner. I told him everything. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, and reviewed copies of the power of attorney documents I'd signed. Finally, he sat back and looked at me seriously. Mrs. Morrison, I want to be clear with you. What your daughter is doing isn't technically illegal. Misguided, overprotective, and controlling, yes. But not illegal unless she actually misuses the power of attorney. But she could. She could try. The good news is you're clearly competent. I can document that with assessments from doctors, cognitive tests, anything you'd like. We can revoke the power of attorney immediately. And we can set up legal protections to ensure no one can make decisions about your life without your explicit consent. What kind of protections? We can create what's called a living will and advance directive that's very specific about your wishes. We can also set up a trust that protects your assets. And if you want to take it further, we can establish a guardianship designation that names someone other than your daughter as your potential guardian, if you ever do become incapacitated. Like who? Anyone you trust. Your son, perhaps? A friend? Even a professional guardian. I thought about Michael. We weren't as close as Jessica and I had been, but he'd always respected my independence. He'd never treated me like I was helpless. My son Michael might be willing. Talk to him. In the meantime, let me draft the revocation documents. The sooner we get this in place, the better. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time, I felt like I had some control over the situation. That evening, I called Michael. It was earlier there, 6 o'clock his time. He answered on the second ring. Mom. Hey, I was just thinking about you. How are you? Just hearing his voice made me emotional. I need to talk to you about something serious. The lightness left his voice. Is everything okay? Are you sick? No, nothing like that. But I need your help. I told him everything. About Jessica, the power of attorney, the pressure to move into assisted living. I tried to be fair, to acknowledge that Jessica probably thought she was helping, but I also didn't sugarcoat how controlling and disrespectful she'd become. Michael was silent for a long time after I finished. Then he said, Mom, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I kept thinking it would get better. That Jessica would back off. And I didn't want to burden you. You have your own life. You're my mother. You're not a burden. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Jessica's always been a bit of a control freak, even as a kid. Remember how she used to rearrange your kitchen cabinets when she was 12? I laughed despite myself. She said she was optimizing efficiency. Exactly. She means well, but she thinks her way is the only way. And she has trouble accepting that other people, even her own mother, might have different priorities. Will you help me? Of course. What do you need? My attorney suggested naming someone else as my guardian designation in case I ever do become incapacitated. Would you be willing? Absolutely. And Mom? If you want to come out here for a while, get some space from Jessica, you're always welcome. Sarah and Lily would love to have you. The offer touched me deeply. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll think about it. Right now, I just need to establish some boundaries. Good for you. It's about time. And Mom? I love you. I love you too. After we hung up, I felt stronger. I had allies. I had a plan. I wasn't alone. The next week, I met with James again and signed all the necessary documents. The power of attorney I'd given Jessica was officially revoked. A new one was created, naming Michael as my agent only if I became incapacitated, and only with confirmation from 2 independent doctors. My advance directive specified exactly what medical treatments I would and wouldn't want. And a trust was established to protect my assets, and ensure they couldn't be accessed without proper legal process. Now, James said, you need to tell your daughter. That was the part I'd been dreading, but it had to be done. I invited Jessica to my house the following Sunday. She came alone without Brad. Maybe she sensed this was serious. We sat in the living room, the same places as before. But this time I was the one with the folder. Jessica, we need to talk. She looked worried. Mom, if this is about the assisted living conversation, I'm sorry. Brad and I were just trying to help. We went about it the wrong way. This is about more than that conversation. This is about the last 18 months of you systematically undermining my independence and treating me like I'm incompetent. That's not fair, Mom. I've been trying to support you. No, you've been trying to control me. There's a difference. I pulled out the folder. Do you remember these documents you had me sign 8 months ago? Her face went pale. The power of attorney? Yes. Did you tell me it included financial power of attorney? I mentioned it, didn't I? No, you didn't. You said it was medical power of attorney in case something happened to me. You didn't tell me it gave you control over my finances and property. It was for your protection, Mom. It was for your convenience. And I've revoked it. Jessica's eyes widened. You what? I revoked the power of attorney. I consulted with an attorney who specializes in elder law. He helped me establish legal protections to ensure that no one can make decisions about my life without my explicit consent. Mom, you're being paranoid. I would never abuse that power of attorney. Maybe not intentionally. But Jessica, you've shown me over and over that you don't respect my judgment or my decisions. You think you know better than I do about my own life. And I can't trust someone with that much power over me when they've demonstrated such disrespect. Tears started running down Jessica's face. I love you, Mom. I'm just worried about you. I know you love me, but love without respect is suffocating. You're not worried about me, Jessica. You're worried about your image of me. You can't accept that I'm capable of managing my own life. You had chest pains from anxiety. I had chest pains from the stress you were putting me under. My doctor said I'm one of the healthiest 73-year-olds she knows. But you won't see that. You only see problems that don't exist. Jessica was crying harder now. What do you want from me? I want you to back off. I want you to stop showing up unannounced. Stop going through my things. Stop questioning every decision I make. Stop treating me like a child. I want my daughter back. Not this helicopter parent who thinks I'm incompetent. I don't think you're incompetent. Yes, you do. You said my place is in a home. You said I can't manage on my own. You've said it 100 different ways. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she whispered, I'm scared of losing you like we lost Dad. There it was. The real issue. Not my capability but her fear. My voice softened slightly. Jessica, I understand that fear. I live with it too. But you can't protect me from life, from aging, from eventually dying. None of us know how much time we have. But the time I do have, I want to spend it living, not being managed like a problem to be solved. So what now? Now we establish boundaries. You call before you visit. You stop going through my things. You trust that I can make my own decisions about my health, my home, and my life. And if I ever do need help, I'll ask for it. But I need you to respect that I'm the one who gets to decide when and if that happens. And if I can't do that? The question hung in the air between us. I took a deep breath. Then we'll have a very limited relationship. Because I won't sacrifice my autonomy and dignity for anyone. Even you. Jessica stood up, grabbed her purse. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need. She left without hugging me, without saying goodbye. I heard her car start in the driveway, listened to it pull away. And then I sat in my living room and cried. But these tears were different. They weren't tears of frustration or fear. They were tears of release. I'd stood up for myself. I'd drawn a line. And whatever happened next, I'd done it with dignity. The next 2 weeks were silent. No calls from Jessica. No unannounced visits. Part of me grieved the distance. But another part of me felt freer than I had in years. I threw myself back into my painting. I finished a watercolor of the garden that won second place in a local art show. I went on a day trip with Margaret and Dorothy to a sculpture park 2 hours away. I had dinner with Robertson and his wife, who'd become friends over the years. I video chatted with Michael and his family, who were planning to visit for Thanksgiving. I was living my life. My way. On my terms. 3 weeks after our confrontation, Jessica called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom. Yes. Can we talk? In person. All right. When? Is tomorrow afternoon okay? I'll call first this time. Tomorrow at 2 works. She arrived exactly at 2 alone again. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. We sat in the living room. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Jessica began. And I talked to my therapist about it. I was surprised. You're seeing a therapist? I started going after our fight. Brad suggested it. He said maybe I was projecting my fear about Dad's death onto you. And I needed to work through it. That's very self-aware of him. He has his moments. She gave a small smile. Mom, you were right. About all of it. I have been treating you like you're incompetent, and it wasn't fair. My therapist helped me see that I was trying to control you because I couldn't control what happened to Dad. He died so suddenly and I couldn't do anything to stop it. So I thought if I could just manage every aspect of your life, make sure you were safe every second, I could prevent losing you too. Oh, Jessica. But that's not how life works. And it's not my right to live your life for you, no matter how scared I am. I'm sorry, Mom. Really, truly sorry. Not sorry you got upset, but sorry for what I did. For how I treated you. This was a real apology. Maybe the first one she'd ever given me. I accept your apology. Can we start over? With the boundaries you talked about. I'd like that. But Jessica, I need you to understand something. If you slip back into those patterns, I will maintain those boundaries, even if it means less contact between us. I love you, but I love myself too. And I deserve to be treated with respect. I understand. And I'll work on it. It might not be perfect right away, but I'll try. That's all I ask. She stayed for another hour. We had tea. We talked about her kids, about the painting I'd won the award for, about Michael's upcoming visit. It wasn't perfect. There was still tension, still healing that needed to happen. But it was a start. Over the next few months, things slowly improved. Jessica called before visiting. She stopped going through my things. She asked about my life instead of interrogating me about my capabilities. We had setbacks, moments when she'd slip into her old patterns and I'd have to remind her of our boundaries. But she'd catch herself and apologize. Brad even apologized to me privately one afternoon when he came with Jessica to drop off Emma for an overnight visit with Grandma, Eleanor. I'm sorry for how we approached things before. Jessica's told me about your conversations, and I realize I was enabling her fears instead of helping her deal with them. You're clearly more than capable of managing your own life. I appreciate that, Brad. The real surprise came from Emma, my 15-year-old granddaughter. After Brad left and Jessica had gone home, Emma and I were making cookies together. Grandma, I'm proud of you. For what, sweetie? For standing up to Mom. She told me some of what happened. Not all of it, but enough. She said you taught her that love has to include respect, and she was forgetting that. I felt tears prick my eyes. Your mom and I are still working things out. I know. But you showed her that even people who love each other have to have boundaries. That's important. My therapist says the same thing. You see a therapist too? Yeah, for my anxiety. It helps. Mom said maybe her anxiety about losing you is like my anxiety about school stuff. Both are real feelings, but they don't mean the world is actually as scary as our brains say it is. This girl was wise beyond her years. That's very insightful. Also, Mom said you won an art award? Can I see the painting? I showed her the watercolor, and we spent the evening talking about art, about her worries for the future, about boys she liked, about college applications. It was one of the best evenings I'd had in years. When Jessica picked her up the next morning, Emma hugged me tight and whispered, "Thanks for showing me it's okay to stand up for yourself, even with family." After they left, I sat on my porch with my coffee and looked at my garden. The roses Richard had planted 20 years ago were blooming. The bird feeder I'd hung last spring was attracting cardinals and finches. My watercolor supplies were set up in the sunroom, ready for my next project. This was my home, my life, my choice. I'd spent 40 years in this house building a life, raising children, loving a husband, and eventually rebuilding after loss. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Michael called later that day. "Hey Mom. Just confirming our Thanksgiving plans. We'll fly in on Tuesday, stay until Sunday. Sarah wants to know if you need her to bring anything. Just yourselves." And Michael? Thank you. For what? For respecting my choices. For being willing to support me without smothering me. Mom, you're one of the strongest people I know. I'm not going to pretend you're helpless when you're clearly not. Besides, you've always supported my independence. It's the least I can do to return the favor. After we hung up, I thought about his words. One of the strongest people I know. When had I lost sight of that about myself? When had I started letting Jessica's fears define how I saw my own capabilities? Never again. That evening, I got a text from Jessica. It was a photo of her at a new art supply store that had opened near her house. The caption read, "Saw this and thought of you. Want to go check it out together next week? My treat. No strings attached, just quality time with my amazingly talented mom." I smiled and texted back. I'd love that. It wasn't perfect. Family relationships never are. But we were finding our way back to each other. This time with respect and boundaries intact. The following week, Margaret, Dorothy, and I took another trip, this time to a coastal town 3 hours away. We stayed in a charming bed and breakfast, painted seascapes on the beach, and had long dinners talking about everything and nothing. On the second night, over wine and dessert, Dorothy said, "Eleanor, you seem different lately. Lighter somehow." I feel lighter. I stood up for myself with my daughter, and it changed everything. Margaret raised her glass. To standing up for ourselves. To living on our own terms. To refusing to let anyone, even family, make us feel less capable than we are. We clinked glasses, 3 women in our 70s who'd survived loss, rebuilt our lives, and refused to be sidelined just because of our age. Back home I continued my routines. My painting classes. My book club. My garden. My weekly coffee dates with friends. My video chats with Michael's family. And now monthly lunch dates with Jessica where we talked about our lives, our hopes, our challenges, as 2 adult women, not as a parent and child. One afternoon, about 6 months after our confrontation, Jessica and I were having lunch at a small cafe near my house. She was telling me about a project at work when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence. "Mom, I need to tell you something." My heart clenched. "What is it?" I joined a support group for adult children of aging parents. It's helped me realize how common my fears were, but also how unhealthy the way I was handling them was. Other people in the group have shared their experiences, and some of them, their parents really do need help. Memory issues, mobility problems, real safety concerns. And then I think about you and I realize you're nothing like that. You're sharp, independent, active. I was treating you like you had problems you didn't have. I appreciate you acknowledging that. But the group also helped me realize something else. Someday you might need help. And when that day comes, if it comes, I want you to feel comfortable asking me. Because I want to be there for you in the right way. Supporting you without controlling you. Jessica, if that day ever comes, I promise I'll ask for help. But I need you to trust that I'll know when I need it. I'm trying. I really am. And she was. I could see it in how she caught herself before asking intrusive questions. How she waited for me to share information instead of demanding it. How she celebrated my independence instead of fearing it. Around this same time I made another decision. I started volunteering at a local organization that helped seniors who were being taken advantage of by family members. My experience with Jessica, though it had ended well, had opened my eyes to how vulnerable older adults can be. Especially when family members use love as a justification for control. I met with seniors who've been financially exploited, isolated from friends, or pressured into living situations they didn't want. I shared my story. I connected them with legal resources. I reminded them that age doesn't equal incompetence, and that they had the right to make their own decisions as long as they were mentally capable. It was fulfilling work that gave meaning to what I'd gone through. If my struggle with Jessica could help even one other person stand up for their autonomy, it was worth it. One woman I worked with, Ruth, was 81. Her son had moved her into his house against her wishes, sold her condo without her permission, and was controlling all her finances. She was miserable but felt trapped. "He says he's taking care of me," she told me, tears in her eyes. "But I feel like a prisoner. I had friends at my condo. I had my own space. Now I'm in his guest room and he monitors everything I do. He says it's because he loves me. Love doesn't take away your choices," I told her. "Love respects them." I connected Ruth with James Morrison, my attorney. Together, we helped her regain control of her finances and move into a senior apartment she chose for herself. Her son was furious. He accused her of being ungrateful and me of interfering. But Ruth? Ruth was finally free. And that's what mattered. Thanksgiving came. Michael, Sarah, and Lily arrived on Tuesday as planned. It was wonderful having them in the house, filling it with laughter and energy. Jessica, Brad, Emma, and Jake came for Thanksgiving dinner. It was the first holiday we'd all been together since my confrontation with Jessica, and I was nervous about how it would go. But it was lovely. We cooked together, the kitchen full of people and conversation and the smell of turkey and pies. We ate around the big dining table Richard had built 30 years ago. We went around saying what we were grateful for. When it was my turn, I said, "I'm grateful for family who respects my independence. I'm grateful for my health and my home. And I'm grateful for second chances to get relationships right." Jessica's eyes teared up. She squeezed my hand across the table. After dinner, Michael and Jessica ended up in the kitchen together doing dishes. I overheard their conversation from the living room where I was playing cards with the grandkids. "She seems really good," Michael said. "She is. She always was. I was just too scared to see it. I'm glad you figured it out. Mom deserves to live however she wants to live." "I know. And Mike? Thanks for being there for her when I wasn't. She told me you agreed to be her guardian designation if anything ever happens." "Of course. But honestly, I don't think she'll ever need a guardian. Mom's going to outlive us all." They both laughed, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. My children finally on the same page about respecting my autonomy. That night, after everyone had gone home or gone to bed, I sat in my living room alone. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. This house had seen so much. Joy, grief, conflict, and resolution. It had sheltered my family through decades of life. And it was still mine. My home. My choice. My life. I thought about that moment 6 months ago when Jessica had said, "Your place is in a home, Mom." How those words had shattered me, but also galvanized me into action. She'd been wrong. My place wasn't in a nursing home or an assisted living facility. My place was wherever I chose it to be. And right now that was here, in the home I'd built with Richard, surrounded by memories and possibilities. I decided my future. Not Jessica. Not anyone else. Me. And I'd do it again every single day for as long as I was able. The next morning I got up early and made coffee. Michael came downstairs in his pajamas just like he used to when he was a kid. "Morning, Mom. You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Too happy, I think." He smiled and poured himself coffee. "This visit has been really great. The house feels lighter than it did last time I was here." "It is lighter. I am lighter. You know, Sarah and I were talking last night. We want you to come visit us for Christmas if you want. Stay for a couple weeks. We'd love to show you around, take you to some galleries, spend real time together." "I'd love that. Let me check with my painting instructor about missing classes, but yes. I'd really love that." "Great. And Mom? I'm proud of you. For standing up for yourself. I know that wasn't easy. It was necessary. And you're right, it wasn't easy. But some things are worth fighting for, even if the fight is with people we love." Later that day, after Michael's family had left for the airport and the house was clean again, I went into my sunroom. I set up a fresh canvas and mixed my paints. I wanted to capture this feeling, this sense of peace and autonomy and possibility. I painted for hours, losing myself in the colors and shapes. When I finally stepped back, I'd created something unexpected. It wasn't a landscape or a still life. It was abstract, swirls of deep blue and vibrant orange, representing the turbulence I'd gone through and the strength I'd found. I titled it My Choice. The following week, Jessica came for our regular lunch date. Afterward, she asked if she could see what I'd been working on. I showed her the new painting. She stood in front of it for a long time, not saying anything. Finally, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful, Mom. And I understand what it means." "Do you?" "Yeah. It's about the storm you went through with me. And how you came out stronger." "Right. That's part of it. It's also about choice. About having the right to determine your own path, even when it's messy or turbulent or scary. I'm sorry I tried to take that away from you. I know you are. And I've forgiven you. But I'll never forget the lesson. About standing up for myself, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Jessica hugged me tight. "I love you, Mom. And I respect you. I should have been saying both of those things all along, not just the first one. I love you too, sweetheart." After she left, I stood in my sunroom and looked out at the garden. The leaves were starting to change colors. Autumn painting the world in golds and reds. Another season passing. Another chapter of life unfolding. I was 73 years old. I'd survived widowhood, cancer, grief, and a battle for my own autonomy. I'd lost things and people along the way. But I'd also gained wisdom, strength, and a clear understanding of who I was. Eleanor Morrison. Artist. Mother. Grandmother. Volunteer. Friend. Independent woman who made her own choices. Not someone whose place was in a home, unless she decided that's where she wanted to be. And for now, my place was right here. In my house. Living my life. On my terms. That evening, I called Robert Chun to check on my investments. Everything was in perfect order as always. "Eleanor, I have to say, you continue to be one of my favorite clients. Not just because you're organized and responsible, but because you're living proof that age is just a number. You're more active and engaged than people half your age." "Thank you, Robert. That means a lot." "I mean it. My own mother is about your age, and I hope when she's 73, she has half your independence and joy." After we hung up, I made myself dinner. A simple pasta with vegetables from my garden. I ate it on the back patio, watching the sun set over the yard Richard and I had planted together decades ago. Tomorrow I had my painting class. Thursday I had coffee with Margaret and Dorothy. Saturday I was volunteering at the Senior Advocacy Center. Sunday I had lunch plans with Jessica. My calendar was full. My life was full. And it was entirely beautifully mine. Some people might look at me and see an elderly woman living alone. They might worry. They might think I'm vulnerable or need protecting. But I'm not vulnerable. I'm resilient. I don't need protecting. I need respecting. And my place isn't in a home, not unless I decide it is. My place is wherever I choose to be, for as long as I'm able to make that choice. And I'll defend that right fiercely, lovingly, and without apology. Because I am Eleanor Morrison. And I decided my future. Not anyone else.